Y'all been watching any of them games?
No, because they've been boring. They've been blowouts, and honestly, I thought it was gonna be done already.
Nah, I think they'll win it this one in Boston.
That's probably what they wanted to do.
I thought it was gonna be done. I was just like,
Yeah.
I didn't think Boston was gonna come out like that though.
Neither did I. I actually
I
thought
thought
Dallas
the Mavs
was gonna win.
was gonna put it down on them boys, but nope.
Yeah. I will say, and because I've been giving different things I've been watching from The Chosen, which I still need to catch up on episode 3 and 4 and have been released, which is really good. I haven't seen it, but they actually do a lot better. Like, I will say The Chosen is one of those shows that I feel like stepped up in acting. Like, I like the old corny Christian movies every once in a while. No, I do. I mean, I know they're corny, bad acting sometimes. It's just a matter of like to watch them and just kind of fall asleep to them. But The Chosen actually has pretty good acting. Like each season, their effects get better. They actually have a pretty good storyline. So I'm kind of interested in seeing this next.
They got any name actors?
Well, he's become famous. I mean, he's somewhat. But the guy who played Jesus, he came out on that other.
Jonathan, what's his name? Jonathan something.
Yeah, he's come out on several things. He actually, what's interesting is he was traveling a while with Mark Wahlberg, because because Mark Wahlberg's big in his Catholic faith.
Yeah.
And so they were promoting that prayer app, where you get that app and you can pray with them, like Mark Wahlberg or with him, and it's like, a minute or whatever a day or 30 minutes, and they had that going on. So they were traveling around together for a while, kind of promoting that. And then honestly, the actress you would know, one of the girls on there, she plays one of the followers of Jesus who's going to get married to one of the disciples. And she's actually the one that comes out on like NCIS Hawaii.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, she looks like she's Asian or something, but she's actually...
The short one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know. I think she... And forgive me if I get it wrong. I don't know if she played a lesbian on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah, she's on NCIS Hawaii.
She's in love with the FBI.
Yeah.
Blondie girl.
So that one.
White girl.
Yeah, so that one, I think that's her. I'm pretty sure that's her. She comes out on The Chosen. She plays... the way the storyline goes, she's... Her and one of the disciples were pulled... And I can't remember which disciple it is, but they were pulled at when Jesus turns the water to wine, her dad's the one that's running the wine business.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And so she starts following Jesus.
Yeah, because the guy that plays the father on I Can Only Imagine, he comes out in a lot of Christian movies
Dennis
now.
Quaid?
Yeah, Dennis Quaid.
Well, yeah, Dennis Quaid. Yeah, he's been coming out a lot.
Lately, he's been doing a lot of Christian movies.
The one that I wanted to see,
Which one?
and that's what I was telling him about, the one that he was like, oh, you want to watch, was Unsung Heroes. So most people, unless you grew up listening to K-Love in the 90s and 2000s, and you still have a good memory, because I say that because he doesn't remember, but but if you have a good memory, you remember a singer called Rebecca St. James. Okay, so Rebecca St. James is the older sister of who everyone knows now, the older sister to the two brothers for King and Country.
Oh, okay.
So she was the first one to make it in Christian music. Like
Okay.
she was touring and stuff like that. The movie's about their life because their parents brought them from Australia, and it's about how they were there at the church and stuff, and how they were struggling, and then her career took off, and then how it led. I think it's more about how her career took off. Because I think the mother had to sacrifice a whole bunch, and the dad and stuff. So that's what the Unsung Hero just came out on it, which is interesting. One of the For King and Country brothers actually plays his own father in the movie. So that's pretty
Unsung. What is it?
Unsung Heroes.
Unsung Heroes.
Yeah, so that one's pretty interesting. I haven't seen it. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, no. I think you're right though about the movies getting better though.
They are.
Like, I remember watching movies, and my favorite movie to watch was the Bible. It would come on every Easter Sunday would come on with what was his name? Charleston Heston. No, was that who it was?
Charleston Heston came out on the Moses. I don't know if he came out on the Bible. Maybe he did.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know he came out on Moses.
Yeah, the Bible.
The Ten Commandments. He came
Oh
out
yeah,
on
Ten Commandments. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
Well, back then those were pretty good movies.
Yeah.
Then somewhere in the middle, you started getting like these kind of cornier Christian movies.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me. I read the Left Behind series and really liked it, but then when they tried to convert it to a movie, they did like a very horrible job on it. And I mean, I still enjoyed watching it, but it was a little corny in there. But I mean, now that you see these other ones.
Yeah, it was
out.
that kid actor that did the Left Behind.
Kirk Cameron.
Yeah, Kirk
He had
Cameron.
done it, but it didn't seem like they had a big budget for it.
No.
So it was like very. But I mean, now again, I think the whole thing on it is pretty interesting. Like, just because they read into church history, and then I think they also take just a lot of stuff that was going on. So like, even in season 4, and spoiler alert, but you probably know unless if you already read the Bible,
right.
but John the Baptist gets killed.
Yeah.
So it's in the Bible, so I don't
is.
think I'm giving that big of a spoiler.
No.
But anyways, you see Jesus' reaction to it because they're cousins. And so what's kind of cool is they bring to life that whole cousin relationship of when Mary goes visit Elizabeth when she's pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's one thing to read it, but then to actually see it in front of you and kind of imagine it.
Yeah.
That's what I like about The Chosen in movies like that. Like, you see it and then you kind of, wow, I didn't think of that aspect.
Yeah, somebody's perception of it, yeah.
Well, it's like, even like, they've made the movies of Noah, and like the last one that they had made a while back with, what's his name? Not Gerald Butler, but the other guy.
The guy who played
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe, he played in Gladiator.
Which they took a lot of it from the book of Enoch, which is not in the Bible, and is a lot of people don't believe it's in there. So I'm not saying like everything's biblical about it. I'm not saying you should believe everything you watch. But what I took away from it is the interesting aspect of, like, imagining you're in that boat and you hear the people on the outside.
Yeah.
Like, because the water rose, but it's not like it rose like within
right away.
1 minute and they all died. Like, you're hearing it as it's rising. Mm-hmm. Some of them are swimming or whatever. They're trying to hold on. And you can hear them outside, like, dying, like the agony that you got to live with.
Yeah. In reality, I don't think none of them knew how to swim because it hadn't rained.
Yeah.
Well,
but you don't know. They might have gone into the lakes and stuff. They might have gone into the waters. But even then, just holding onto the boat or trying to get onto somewhere, and then you have them, and
I didn't even think about that. That's got to be rough.
Well, wow. and then then that leads you for me. Then that maybe, I'm not saying it justifies it, but now it leads you to, later on you find Noah. I mean, you hear the story later on in the Bible of Noah, where he lands and he drinks these fermented grapes and gets drunk and is naked there. And it makes you wonder, like, you think, well, why would he have done that when you're just reading the Bible? But you start filling in the gaps. I mean, you're living with the noise of people dying outside of it. Wouldn't you want to forget? Like, even though it's not your fault, you're not, you're following God's will, but
still,
still the agony of living with that.
That's tough.
So I don't know. To me, that's what I look at. It's not just all of that, but I don't know. Wow. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
Well, welcome to the No Name Podcast.
Yeah, and happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Yes, sir. Happy Father's Day over there.
Hey. I already said it.
Hey.
I just one time and that's it.
No, well, I was gonna say Happy Father's Day. Pending DNA test.
Yeah, that's true too.
We go with the milkman stories.
Yeah.
Welcome to the No Name Podcast,
the
episode 94.
And the mailman.
Episode 94.
Stop it, bro.
If you can't laugh at, and enjoy yourselves, what's the point of living?
Yeah, true.
You got to be able to laugh at that.
True.
So welcome to No Name Podcast, episode 94. Hit the like and subscribe button. Pass it along to others. And definitely hopefully, whether your father's alive or you have father figures in your life or you're a father or whatever, just make sure you wish each other a happy Father's Day and, should celebrate every day or, try to celebrate not just once a year, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, what you were
Oh.
saying, if you can laugh and enjoy life or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, I think sometimes that's what we miss in the Bible and all that. Like the
Yeah.
movies that are coming out, and makes like a, you know, the people in the Bible more human.
More
to
human.
people.
Yeah.
No, I agree. That's
Because when we read it, we think that they were just like robots or
Yeah.
something, you know, like Jesus, you know.
I think when you actually read some of the Bible and some of Jesus' remarks, you can actually read it as him being sarcastic,
Right.
or even joking around, like, you know. And I think that's what's been good about like The Chosen and stuff like that. Like they showed Jesus at times with his disciples, like they go running into the water and just laughing, right? Because they're guys hanging out, like
Yeah.
they're going through life and stuff. So
Yeah.
no, I yeah, definitely. But again, happy Father's Day, and yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, I was just trying to think where to lead with that. It's always interesting. I mean, I think for Father's Day, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, Father's Day, for me, it's always, we got the greatest father ever, bro.
That's true.
Yeah, we got the greatest father ever, man. Like, can do anything in your life, you know. So
I was listening to this Orthodox priest in a short video, you know, on the YouTube Shorts. And I'm not going to do justice for his explanation, so feel free to go look him up. He looked it up better than me. He's that Orthodox priest that almost got stabbed and he lost an eye.
was he?
Okay.
He got a
Australian?
long beard, and we wear like one of those.
I don't know if he has too long a beard, but he has like a patch now on his eye because he was that guy that got attacked in Australia. And
Yeah.
the attacker's knife got stuck, but he did get him in the eye, so he lost his eye. And he gave a speech about giving his eye for if that brings his Islam and Muslim brothers to Christ, then he's willing to give his eye for it.
Wow.
But he was talking about,
Wow.
he made a short speech, and it was interesting. I never thought about this way. And it was kind of, there's a part, I can't remember if it's Paul or who, but there's a conversation about who's greater, the Father or the Son. And he was talking about how they've always been in existence together, because he was saying, he said, God is God. He said, but God cannot become the Father unless he has the Son.
Right.
Because you're not a father unless you have a son.
That's
And he
right.
said, and the son can't become a son unless he's there.
Right.
He's like, so they've always been existent. The father and the son's always equal in the sense of God and stuff because of that. So it's kind of interesting. So I don't know. Maybe there's a little keynote for Father's Day.
Yeah, there you go.
Unless anyone wants to give a touching story.
Go for it.
No?
We're all about that.
No.
No, but definitely happy Father's Day to everyone. We're in Acts chapter 24. So they've taken Paul and they've sent him to, I believe his name is Felix.
Yeah.
And he's now here. And basically Felix has told him he's going to hold him until his accusers come.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting. 24 is interesting just because of the whole compact of what's going on here. I'll just start off at verse 1. It says, now after 5 days, Ananias, the high priest, came down with the elders and a certain orator named Tertullus. Tertullus. These gave evidence to governors against Paul. And that's what's it. So the high priest comes. This is the same high priest that ordered Paul to be slapped. Paul didn't know he was the high priest. But they bring they bring a special speaker. And
He's almost like an attorney, almost. if you
pretty
think about
much,
it.
and he's coming to bring the accusations. And it's just interesting how this whole thing goes, because it seems it's almost like all about politics. But then you still see Paul's delivering the message. And verse 2, the second part of it says, seeing that this is the orator, he's speaking. He says, seeing that through you we enjoy great peace and prosperity is being brought to the nations by your foresight, we accept it always and in all places, most noble Felix, with all thankfulness. Nevertheless, not to be tedious to you and any further, I beg you to hear by your courtesy a few words from us.
Yeah.
For we have found this man a plague, a creator of dissension among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, and we seized him and wanted to judge him according to our law. But the commander Lilius
he came
by with great violence, took him out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come to you. So, and I read that piece because here's the thing. The Jews, if it was their way with Paul, they would have killed him already.
He would have already been dead, for sure.
But because he's Roman citizen, it made it harder. Secondly, he hadn't really committed a crime. And here he's accusing them that he's broken a law of theirs. And what you're going to see is Paul's going to tell them, what law have I broken?
Right.
But what I find interesting is the way this man approaches the governor, Felix. And he talks about the peace and he talks about all this. But when you really look back then, the only reason if they even did have peace, which was very small, was because they were marginalized by the Romans. They weren't, like, what made Paul different from the rest of the Israelites or the Jewish, was that he was Roman citizen. If he wasn't a Roman citizen, they were considered second-class citizens of that.
Yeah.
And so it's ironic that he's coming and he's telling them, oh, you great governor, this and that.
Yeah, he's talking with a lot of humility.
They're trying to butter him up.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of humility.
You know, and that's one of the things, like, you never, in all of this, you never see Paul do that. Like, Paul's always going to respect and he's going to say the truth, but never in any of his speeches has Paul ever been like, oh, you guys are great governors or you're this and that. Like, he's always, and that's one of the things, like, it's not about being disrespectful or anything like that, but it's, again,
he just tells the truth.
Yeah. And so you see that they're accusing him of all these things.
It's crazy, though. They're trying to accuse him, and they even tried to kill him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they plotted to kill him. They bring him over here. They see Paul so much as a threat. And then Paul's response to this is basically like, they have nothing to accuse him of.
You got nothing against me.
And he says this. He says, then Paul, after the governor had nodded to him to speak, answered, inasmuch as I know that you have been for many years a judge of this nation, I do the more cheerful answer for myself, because you may ascertain that it is no more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship, and they neither found me in the temple disputing with anyone, nor inciting the crowd, either the synagogue or in the city, nor can they prove the things of which they now accuse me. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, so I worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. I have hope in God, which they themselves also accept, that there will be resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. This being so, I myself always strive to have a conscience without offense towards God and men. Now, after many years, I came to bring alms and offering to my nation, in the midst of which some Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with a mob nor with a tumult. I don't know what that means. They ought to have been here before you to object if they had anything against me. Or else those who are here themselves say, if they found any wrongdoing in me while I stood before the council, unless it is for this one statement which I cried out standing among them, concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged by you this day. Yeah. So he basically says, like, here's the interesting part about it. Paul naturally was going to preach the gospel, but he wasn't going to Jerusalem to preach the gospel. Like, he went there to go worship God, and that's what he's telling them. Like, I went there. He's like, I haven't incited a riot. I wasn't arguing with anyone. Yeah. I've literally gone there and worshiped. But who are the ones that came and accused him? The ones from Asia. Why? Because Paul preaching the good news over there had caused an upright. Had caused
problems over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's one of the things, like, we've talked about this in the past. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we miss in the good news of Christ, because we hear that the good news brings us peace, but it brings us peace when we get aligned with God. Prior to that peace, it's going to bring some chaos, especially within ourselves, our lifestyle, or whatever it is, because that relationship with God calls us to be closer to Him. and to let go of everything else. And that letting go of everything else becomes the hardest part of things. And it's not so much like whenever we talk about that, people go to sins quickly, the sins they think of. But if we go all the way back to the Ten Commandments, we go back to the purity of of what Jesus has said. The main thing in all of this is that there shouldn't be anything above God and the relationship between you and God.
Nope.
And that can be stuff that we see as good. You know, that's why Jesus, one of the hardest scriptures I think sometimes people struggle with in explaining, because it's a very, it's not an easy scripture to explain, is when Jesus talks about that if you love me, you got to hate your mother, your brother, your sister. And he wasn't talking about like you actually have to hate them,
right.
but he's talking about like his love has to be above that.
Yeah, it has to
and that sounds very weird, because in the place, in times and stuff we've grown up in and we've been raised in, and even before that, as we've gone further away from the original relationship in the beginning, you're taught, you know, it's about you first, and then if it's not about you first, then it's about your family first. And God is actually saying it's not even about your family first, it's about him first.
Yeah.
And that's a hard concept to swallow when everyone else is telling you it's about your family first, is this and that. But one of the things, the irony of it is when you actually put God first, your family comes second or wherever you put it, but it should be second there. It's better off for your family than if you had put your family first. Because you put your family first, then you don't have the guidance and the wisdom of the Creator. And that's something that Paul's explaining here, like when he's showing this. His whole
That's what he was doing, though. If you think about it, right?
Yeah.
He was trying to show people, look, this is what I believe in first.
Yeah.
I believe in the way. If you look in there, I believe in that first over anything.
Yep.
And it's just it's amazing to me that you still see this same thing happening today.
Yeah.
All he was doing was coming to tell the truth, and people was lying against him.
Yeah.
They lied on him. They wanted to kill him. You know what I mean? Like it was a bunch of crazy stuff for this guy. Like and he wasn't doing nothing but telling the truth.
If they're not receptive, you see, then like the Asian people, they were following him.
Yeah.
You know, Paul wasn't looking for them.
Yeah,
they were following
those pesky Jews. That was like back in 15.
To disrupt wherever he went.
Yeah. And it was the Jews of Asia, not the...
I mean, the Jews of Asia, you know.
Yeah.
They were following him, you know, and that's what nowadays is the same thing, you know. If they didn't like what he was saying, don't follow him.
Yeah,
Leave
exactly.
him alone, you know. If it wasn't from God, it wouldn't last.
Yeah.
And it's from God, it's gonna last.
Of course.
But
I think it's the same way now. You know, instead of us accepting, we all say that we serve one God.
Right.
All churches, all doctrines, all religions, whatever.
Correct.
You know, but then we're fighting against each other, trying to see who's right and who's wrong. You know, that means we don't accept our one Father. Yeah. You know, because there's always going to be differences. You know.
Well, I think this goes. Well, but you know, no, and I agree with what you're saying. I just think it goes more beyond the thing that was. I think the reason they were trying to, get Paul killed, was because what he had left behind. Like for the Jewish of that time, the hierarchy had always been the priests and the law,
right?
And that, in theory, was about like. They would say God is first, but really what was first was the priests and the laws. Yeah. And Paul went and disrupted that. And the crazy thing about it was Paul didn't go to disrespect the priests or anything like that. Like he even apologized. Like that's what we talked about, the irony of the last one. When he realized that he had misspoken to the high priest, he apologizes. But
immediately apologized.
But his more thing was that he was preaching the way, which was allowing them a freedom. Yeah. And I think here's the thing that I think Rome wasn't so worried about. And I think Rome worried about it later on. Like if you read throughout the Bible later on when Emperor Nero, and it happens towards the end of the Bible, but you know it in history, Emperor Nero, when he takes over, he's the one that kills a lot of the Jews. I think he's the one that ends up executing Paul. and also Peter. But he's really afraid of the Christians because what they saw was that even the Romans understood that if they allowed the law of the Jews, the high priest, to stay in there and they controlled that, then they controlled the Jews.
Yeah.
But the moment people are free from that law, now they had no more control over them. And they feared it, even though Jesus told them that they had to respect the authorities. Paul talks about respecting local authorities.
Right.
They were fearful that these people were going to cause a riot because they were not as afraid as the Jews were. And so you saw this place, and part of it was because the Jews were always worried, you know, in my opinion. The Romans would take away their temple, take away their place to worship. The Romans left it there with thread in their synagogues, but never took it away. And if you remember, when Jesus talks to the Samaritan woman, what is one of because her question to her is, where do we worship? You the Jews say we got to go worship in Jerusalem, but our Father says we got to worship over here. Yeah. And he says there's going to come a time where you just worship in the Spirit.
Right. Yeah.
That kind of liberty breeds other liberties. And I think that's why Nero was later afraid of it. Yep. The Jews were afraid of it because now they no longer had the people under their thumb. And not all of them, because again, you see some of the Jews, you see Paul's eyes open up. You see a Nicodemus, a potential Gaius. You see these other guys whose eyes are open up to the message, and they see it, because that's one of the things I found interesting in Paul's defense, is that he mentions the judges and the prophets. Where did he say it?
Yeah, hold on. I know. Just let me see.
14. He says, "But this I confess to you, that according to the way," so when he's mentioning the way, that's Jesus, which they call a sect, "so I worship." So he's saying, yes, I follow the way, but he says through that, he says, "I worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets." So he's not saying the laws and the prophets are wrong, but he's worshiping through it, but he sees it now through clear eyes with Jesus. Yeah. And I think that's a distinction.
Yeah, and I think too, because look, the disciples weren't very credible. You had fishermen, you had a tax collector that was crooked.
Right, exactly.
You know,
these just ordinary men.
You know, and Judas, who was a treasurer, that was a thief. Yeah. You know, so these guys weren't credible. But Paul was a different story. See, Paul, when he had an encounter with God, now you're talking about a man that was respected, a man that they knew. And that's another reason why the hardcore, that they didn't want to accept the way, that Jesus, they want to get rid of Paul, because they knew that now the word was carrying more weight through Paul, And that's why they were, because now a lot of the Pharisees and Sadducees or whatever, they were becoming receptive of what Paul was saying about the word. Yeah, you see, and they were afraid that they needed to stop it some way or another. Yeah. And the only way is to accuse Paul of doing stuff that was wrong.
Well, and you see that with Felix too. Like that's the thing. Like preaching the gospel. Paul talks about it later on, how it's an offense to us. It's an offense to our flesh. It's an offense to who we are. Like even to this day, even for me, like, and I'm sure you guys would agree with this, even as I read it, it's still an offense to my flesh. Yeah. There's part of me that says, man, I wish I didn't read that scripture. Like, I want to go. It's like what Paul talks about. He's like, I want to do good, but then I do the bad. And, and we all have that in us. And you see that in verse 22, it says, and here now he's talking to Felix, but you're going to see Felix even struggles with it. It says, but when Felix had heard these things, having more accurate knowledge of the way. So remember, the previous guy didn't know so much about the way. Felix knows. He's heard of Jesus. He's heard of this group. Right. He adjourned the proceedings and said, when Laius says the commander comes down, I will make a decision on your case. So that guy has a
He passing the buck.
Yeah. But and here's the thing, you see. So he commanded the Satirians to keep Paul and to let him have liberty, and told him not to forbid any of his friends to provide for or visit him. Because Paul was a Roman citizen, he could hold them, but he was still giving them his liberty. So yes, don't get me wrong. There's other times where Paul's in prison, where he's literally in prison. This one, he's being held captive.
Right.
He's not allowed to. It's almost like house arrest.
Yeah.
Like
I was gonna say,
he's there, but he can go where he needs to go. He can do what he needs to do. He can have his friends visit him. He's just not allowed to leave the city. But here's
he
where
was on bond.
Yeah. maybe that's a better. Maybe that's a better.
He was
example.
on bond. You know.
And 24. So 24 through the rest. Here's where you see Paul starts speaking to him about Jesus.
Yeah, he gets a chance to minister. Yeah.
And you see how it becomes an offense. And then you see greed is also in the mix. It says, after some days when Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was Jewish, so that's why he knew. I think that's why he knew, because his wife was Jewish. He sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith in Christ. Now, as he reasoned about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix was afraid and answered, "Go away for now. When I have a convenient time, I will call for you." So here we go. You have Paul is talking to him about Christ's faith, but guess what? Now he's talking to him about righteousness, self-control, and judgment.
Yeah.
Right? There's a righteousness of God.
Yeah.
There's a self-control that God calls for us. And there's a judgment that's going to be brought on all of us. And that's something that Paul makes clear that we're not able to escape. And you see that, and instead of receiving it, this is an offense to him, so he sends Paul away.
That's today. That's people today.
That's what happens.
Right. If you go out and share the gospel of Jesus Christ with somebody, and you doing it in the way that God is telling you to do it, the way the Holy Spirit is telling you to do it, you do that, you still get people who still gonna reject.
Well, it's almost
regardless.
it's like almost ourselves too. When you're there, you're getting closer to God. Because we're all in a different journey in our relationship with
Yes.
God, and you start reading a certain part of the Bible, and you're like, I don't know about this.
and,
I need to close this
that's
up.
why,
I'll come back to that one.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of Christians don't like to be students of the Word. That's why they don't like to go to Bible studies or the preaching. A lot of them don't mind the worship, the praise, and all that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to studying the Word, because the Word, yes, it gives you liberty, but at the same time, it's going to correct you and tell you what's wrong in your life. It's like going to a doctor. Who's happy to go to a doctor? Most of us are not, because we know that the doctors are going to tell us,
lawyers,
what we need to hear, not what we want to hear.
Yeah.
And that's the same way when you start getting into the Word. God starts dealing with you, dissecting you, and things you got to change, and things that we love that it's hard to sacrifice, and to let go. So that's why we don't mind worship and all that, because that makes us,
But you're
enjoyful.
right, and you know what though? Tony got a good point too. Like sometimes we can get in here and you start reading stuff, and it's offensive to you, and you're just like, "Oh,
yeah." But that's what I mean. That's why people don't read.
But I
the
mean,
Word.
that's
Right.
but that's what it's supposed to. Right, that's what it's supposed to do to you, though.
It's
that's supposed to correct you.
When you have a relationship with God through prayer, through all that, it's gonna give you an urge to want to learn about Him. And
I think,
study and allow God to do what He needs to do.
And I think part of it is to your point, it gives you an urge in that.
Right.
But part of the understanding is we have to come to terms that sometimes the Bible, like we said, it's going to be an offense to us, but it's what we decide to do with that, right? Do we continue on and deal with it and tell the Lord, you know what, Lord, I find this hard, right? Because I enjoy this, or I find it hard because I don't agree with you on this, and actually have the conversation with Him, or do you just close
and
it
let Him work it out?
Yeah,
let Him
or
work
do you
it
close it and
out.
ignore it?
Because He will work it out.
And that's part of the journey with God is if you truly believe that, then you have the conversation, but then you trust in His wisdom and His decision.
And don't get me wrong, that's all of us. If we're all sincere pastors, evangelists, teachers, prophets, whatever they want to call themselves nowadays, apostles and all that, we all struggle with the Word. Especially the two simplest things that Jesus said. Look, I'm going to make it very simple for all of you. Two things. And then Paul kept on doing it too. Love God and love your neighbor. See? He made it simple, the gospel. And loving God is more easier than loving people, especially when
Much
you see
easier.
when you see people that
It's
have
much
hurt
easier.
you,
Yeah.
that people that offended you,
Yeah.
you know.
Come on now.
But God sometimes put them in our lives so we can deal with ourselves.
But I,
Yeah, you know.
and I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't think that loving God is that easily.
Oh no,
easier.
no! But what I mean,
No.
because God won't hurt you.
Well,
But
Right.
yeah, you can get offended by Him.
no. But the reason I say that is because a lot of times we say loving God and we think it's simply saying that we love God.
Right? No,
But to love God means to truly believe that He loves us unconditionally,
Yeah.
and that's one that's we all struggle.
Yeah.
Like
The-
that's one of the hardest things to let go. of.
I think the hardest thing is that we confuse God's love with the love of this world right now. See,
Could be.
you know, the love of the world is a selfish love.
Yeah.
God's love is an action word.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
It's a
Totally agree.
sacrifice. The love of the world is not a sacrifice.
Yeah.
But
You know,
yeah.
Well,
no,
so,
I-
you know that's
no, I
why
agree.
sometimes it's hard to. Yeah,
Well,
you're
that's
right.
right.
to
That's
accept.
what I mean because I think
Yeah.
no, and I agree with you. I think loving people because you have to see them physically there can be harder in a sense. But what I was driving to is like a lot of times the loving God part has to do more with us allowing God to love us.
Yeah.
Because a lot of I was listening to this short video of one of David Wilkerson's preachings. It was actually where it was one of his older his before he died.
Yeah.
In his later years, because David Wilkerson, if you actually listen to his preachings in his later years, he got into what Carter Collins talks about, what Gary Wilkerson and them start talking about later on is the new covenant.
Right.
And he talks about how a lot of us live under the new covenant without truly living under the new covenant and not being able to have that fulfillment because we have the new covenant, we're forgiven, we have these things and we're living for Christ, but yet we carry all this stuff and we're not actually allowing the new covenant, not fully trusting in God's love, not fully trusting in the redemption and stuff. Even though we're living part of it, we haven't reap the full benefits of
Yeah.
it because we still carry our own guilt and stuff. And I think that's one of the things that you see, and that's why the word becomes an offense to us because
And again, because we talked about God's love, okay, loving God and loving people, and automatically we think because we love God, nothing bad should ever happen in our lives.
That's false.
That's
totally 100%
And when things
false.
happen in our life, guess who's the first person we blame? God.
yeah.
Disasters happen in the world.
No,
Why did
man.
God permit it? I was watching a movie a long time ago with my favorite actor, Steven Seagal, the best actor in the world there is.
Oh my God. Come on.
And
bro.
and I'll
Come
never
on,
forget
bro. Come on, man.
a saying.
Nah,
A saying there, that this guy said, the greatest trick that the devil ever performed was making people believe that he doesn't exist.
Did that come out of a Steven Seagal movie?
Huh? Yeah. With that DMX
I've heard.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you talking about exit wounds? Exit wounds. Is
Yeah.
That, yeah. That's
And
what you're talking about.
and when I heard that, I said,
Yeah.
wow, you know what? That's truth.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever, the majority of people never blame the devil. We always blame God. You see how Steven Seagal was used by God?
Did you just literally say Steven Seagal brought you the truth?
The truth, yeah.
Oh, my
you
God.
see? God uses. That's why he's the
We're-
greatest
we're-
actor in the
we're
world.
off the rails now. We're just
Yeah.
But but that's what I mean.
Oh. Okay.
And you're right about it's not easy loving God.
No.
Especially when we think that God's supposed to be good and then things happen that
Yeah.
we lose somebody or things go wrong, in
there's-
our relationships or
Yeah.
our jobs and all that. When we
Yeah.
think that everything's supposed to go fine, and
Well,
that's not true.
And I think it goes beyond that. too.
Right.
Right.
Of course it. And of course it does because okay, so we're talking about loving God.
Yeah.
Right. If you love God, it's like you said. Sometimes it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
But it's just some key elements that you got to have if you really truly want to love God. You got to have faith and trust
Yeah.
and belief in Him and what He can do in your life. You know what I mean? Faith, trust, and you got to have obedience to his word. That is, it's just like you said, love is an action. And if you want to be having an action, you need to know what his words say and put it into action.
Yeah,
that's what it is. That's how you show you love God.
Lately, I've had to go and pray for people that are losing somebody. And the hardest thing that I tell people, and I see it for them to accept, is to accept God's will. You know, I always tell them, I can't promise you God's going to heal them. I can't. Because I don't know what God's will is for that person's life. God's will might be that he's ready to take them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or God's will might be that for him to heal them and keep on living.
Keep on going, yeah.
There's one.
And most people don't want to accept that. They want God to
heal
perform the miracle.
Well, yeah, and I think that's one. So, and there's many aspects.
Right,
Some of
there's
this
a lot
may
of-
speak to
You know,
the other one that I saw. The other thing I've heard, and we'll move to the close out in the next piece. But like in loving God and allowing God to love you, there's actually this guy named George Jinko, who's a podcaster, who probably more of a younger group would know him if you've ever listened to like Logan Paul and all them.
Yeah, 'cause I don't
Like
know who the
he
hell
came out
is.
on it, and he's a Christian, and he's interesting. Like he started his own podcast, been working through things, and one of the things he's talking to this one guy who I can't remember the guy's name, but I know we talked about this guy, the guy that goes to campuses and kind of debates.
Oh yeah, that white guy. Yeah.
So he's talking to him, but one of the things in the short video I was watching, he talks about he was like I struggle to explain God's love because to tell them, like he said, for myself to say that I can go screw up 1,000,000 times and God's still gonna love me.
Yeah.
Like I can be the worst person in the world and God can still love me, and I think that's one of the hardest things because to your point, we're used to this earth love of
When you give me this,
you
buy
step
me
out of
this.
bounds, I'm out.
Right.
You know, you betray my trust, I'm out. But yet God's different. You know, like doesn't mean that you're not gonna have consequences. Doesn't mean you don't have to pay for your things. But you betray God and God still loves you.
Right.
You know, you betray God and God's still there. Like
Because we confuse God's love thinking that if we ask God to forgive us, there's not going to be consequences. In life. God forgives, but you're still
course.
going to pay your
Yeah.
consequences.
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
You know?
So
And that's why the world love is not a sacrificial love. It's a selfish love.
yeah.
If it doesn't come your way, that's it.
Yep.
See you later.
And-
You know. And God's love is not like that. That's why God forgives us 1,000,000 times, and His mercy and grace is always there for us.
Yep.
Because without it, and that's hard to
So
understand as a
thankful for
human
that.
being.
For sure.
Yeah.
I only forgive once, I think, and that's it.
Well, that's why
Nah, just kidding.
That's why you gotta go back and read
Yeah.
about the 77 times 7.
77 times 7. That's good. I've never studied math.
You just need to know. You don't need to know the number. You just need to know it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
A
It's
lot
a lot
more
per
than
day.
you can do.
Yeah, but-
Anyways, to close it out, God uses Felix's greed for money to allow Paul to keep speaking to him. Meanwhile, he also hoped that money would be given him by Paul that he might release him. Therefore, he sent for him more often and conversed with him. So just because he was hoping to get money, and every time Paul's giving him the gospel. So there's always seeds being planted. What I find interesting to close out here, Paul's actually under this arrest or whatever you want to call it, this bondage, for at least 2 years, because it says, but after 2 years, Prochius Festus succeeded Felix, and Felix, wanting to do the Jews a favor, left Paul bound. So you see that he's even moving on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he saw no money.
And,
Yeah, right.
well,
And did the Jews a favor.
Well, he
Yeah.
lost. He either got promoted or something,
Right.
and now you have a new governor. But what you see is Paul's been under house arrest for 2 years. That means they've been He's been
Damn,
waiting
2
for that
years.
commander to come visit him
Sheesh.
to give his story, and the commander hasn't come.
Until 2 years.
And just to keep that favor, so Paul's been there under this house arrest, and he's still preaching the
Still
gospel,
preaching,
doing his
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, like, that may not be the circumstance we always, like, maybe Paul wanted to go back and visit the other churches. He wanted to go do these things. But this is where God has him. And I think that's one of the things is understanding where God has you and what you need to do. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, wish you guys a happy Father's
Happy
Day. Hit
Father's
the like,
Day.
subscribe button.
Yeah.
Leave comments and pass it along to others.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it.
Deuces.